Hello, everyone. This is Kim Langling, and welcome to another edition of the interviews for the global magazine MO2VATE. Today we have Fenella Hemus with us, and she is coming to us from the United Kingdom. She submitted an article, and it was accepted into the fourth edition of MO2VATE magazine, which was the Christmas bumper edition. So, welcome, Fenella. I'm so glad that you could join me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
And I'm going to let the folks know a little bit about you. So I will share a short bio with our listeners. Fenella, she is a performance and mindset coach, master NLP, hypnotherapy, and timeline therapy trainer and speaker. And for 30 years, she has helped others find their unique spark, overcome self-limiting blocks, empower themselves, and realize their potential. She's hugely passionate about supporting others to see their own magnificence. Oh my goodness, if I could talk today. Fenella combines NLP, neuroscience, and health coaching expertise to coach a broad range of clients and train other coaches and leaders as well. So it sounds like, Fenella, that you've got a full plate and that you do an awful lot, and it's all in the service of others.
Yes, basically it has been for ever since I can remember. I first started in 1990 actually working with children, and that's where my spark was ignited in terms of interest in psychology and human behavior. So I was a play worker, and part of my modus operandi is to challenge the status quo and the way that we are brought up and the way that we think. And I think the reason I connected in that way with children is because they don't have to have rules in the same way as adults do. They're much more the, the potential that is there in terms of their imagination, their creativity, their intelligence is all potential. And that's how I connected. I connected back into my childhood and how I felt limited by my own upbringing. So yeah, that's kind of where I started working with children, because I prefer, it's for me, it's about really exploring who the person is themselves, that amazing stuff they have inside them that often gets buried under the layers of, you should do this, it's better if you do this, this is what you need to do, these rules that are kind of imposed in many ways, and we impose them on ourselves too, over our lifetime. And I seriously believe every single human being is absolutely magnificent. And if I didn't, I wouldn't be working with my clients. I'd farm them. I'd refer them out, because that's why they get results. They get results because I completely believe in them, and that's how I think that a practitioner, when you work with other people, is the energy exchange. You've got someone who believes in you. You kind of feel that, and you start to believe in yourself as well. It's the same, where we have really successful doctors and anyone who works with people who gets really good results. It's about that connection between human beings, and us lifting each other up, essentially.
There's a lot of power in that. There's a lot of power in that mutual energy that is shared when you're working with folks. And I love how, and I didn't know that about you, that you started with children. And I always think, when I think of people that work with children and stuff, children, even remembering when my daughter was just a little thing, as she, her toddler years, and even up till she was maybe 7 or 8, there was always wonder in her eyes, and she was so open to everything.
Yeah,
And it was so lovely for me to put myself in and see the world through her eyes, because it was absolutely magical.
yeah,
Everything was amazing.
yeah,
Everything
yeah,
from a dead worm on the sidewalk to a teeny tiny little flower growing in the middle of the yard.
yeah,
Everything was just magical and amazing.
yeah,
And it is a shame that we lose a lot of that as we grow older, and societal norms, I guess, if you want to put a word on it, all these rules and stuff. I was one that always kind of pushed pushed back a little bit
yeah.
on that. But so with children, you were working with them to keep that open and explore that. Now you're doing that with adults.
Yeah. So I mean, as I said, I came out of art college, and what do you do with a degree in fine art? apart from, and I came out very disillusioned actually, whilst I made kind of public stuff, I made play structures as well at the end. And for me, the art world was a little bit, it kind of, it was exclusive. It didn't include everyone. So it kind of just, what do you do? Well, go and work with kids. And when I started working, I was like, God, yes, the same as you said about children, is that the creativity, the imagination, the willingness. Again, for me, risk is a huge thing. It's about building confidence. And so, yeah, I ended up running an adventure playground. And again, that's about breaking rules, or not having the rules in the first place. You know, is that there's anything is possible, because anything is possible. And that's kind of, you know, the thread that runs through the work that I do, you know, with NLP. It's all about, you know, and in thinking about neuroscience and quantum physics, is that anything is possible because everything has an energy potential. And that's when and so kind of like, it's interesting for me, my world has gone from art to science, because I believe that they're like that anyway. So
I agree with that. I agree with that. And yes, and I think it's fascinating. Actually, I find NLP fascinating. I don't teach it or anything like that, but I found myself reading more on it, and I bought myself a book. It's actually called NLP for Dummies. Because I was like, I want something that's just the very basic, very beginning, so I understand, you know, the history of it and where it came from. And I pull that book out every once in a while and start reading it. And it's truly, there's a lot of valuable information in there. And I just find it incredibly fascinating. And I'm looking forward to learning more as I read through more things like that. I find it fascinating. So, you know, kudos to you for practicing that and putting that into practice and working with so many people, because I can only imagine it's a huge benefit to many.
it really is, because the fundamentals behind NLP is, you know, it's a lot of people. There's kind of two camps. People who learn it will come out of the training and they go, and you say to them, you know, what was the one thing? And they go, it changed my life. It changed the way I looked at the world. It changed the way I think. And the same with my clients. It's a set of practical tools and techniques. It's also a way of thinking. It's a very empowered way of thinking. But it's a set of tools and techniques that simply describe how we use our minds, and then how we can use our minds to make them work for us. So it's based on modeling, and it's based on modeling really successful therapists in the past. And it's based on psychology, even though some psychologists say, you know, but don't think it has any basis. It actually is. You know, William James, Carl Jung, you know, and other psychologists. It's kind of just it's an amalgamation of all of those people who have been brilliant in their own time, taking the essential parts and putting them into a set of processes that people then can experiment with, because everyone is individual. And that's why I love NLP, is because I work with the person. I don't work with any of their labels. I don't work with any of that stuff that they come with. It's all future facing. And I work with them to kind of get, so they can, I really get and step into their model of the world and how they understand the world. And then, you know, that part of the world that's not working, their model of the world that's not working for them, it's kind of like, okay, let's find the details, because it's the details that make the difference. Everything we hold, everything we do and think about is held as an internal representation. It's coded in our minds. So when you change a code that doesn't work, a representation that doesn't work, it'll change a person like that, because we work at the unconscious level, because most of our behavior is unconscious. And that's where it's so powerful. You know, it's not a magic wand, but what it does is it starts someone off at the unconscious level. Because if we do everything by willpower wears out. Our conscious mind is slower than our unconscious mind. And our unconscious mind it's the goal getter. It will be the thing that always wins out in the end, because that's where all our habits are. So if we can change something in there, and that's how the clients do all the work, I'm just there to guide them to make those little changes and go through processes where they'll come out at the end and they'll start doing the things they want to do. They'll start having a more successful life, or a more successful way of thinking. And it's applicable in business as well, because essentially NLP is all about communication. It's about how we communicate with ourselves and how we communicate with others. And if we can communicate with other people more effectively, we can end up with fewer misunderstandings, and we can end up with better results in terms of, our relationships, in terms of business as well. So, it's just a way of, just a kind of way of doing doing your life, really.
And I like how you mentioned with the communications. It helps with communication and to be able to better communicate. And if everyone took even just a couple chapters out of what it is that you teach and the tools that you provide, boy, this world would be an entirely different place, wouldn't it?
It absolutely would. And in a way, this might be a little bit controversial, but in a way, people who control, they're using NLP, they're using language to manipulate. People say NLP is manipulative. Well, anything can be manipulative. And if we
Sure.
listen carefully to how people speak, if we are aware of that, then we can then make conscious decisions about whether we'll engage in that, or whether we will challenge it. But we operate mostly in a very light trance when we're talking. When people are talking, mostly they're in a trance. So they're in a light trance. So yeah, it just makes our awareness. We have a heightened awareness. Yeah. So
I like in your article, you have, and the name of your article in the MO2VATE magazine, by the way, was All the Resources We Need. And I highlighted, I'm a highlighter, so I highlighted a few things within your article. And a couple of the comments you have in here, it says, consider this. All our lives up to now, and including this moment, are a result of virtually every decision that we've made. We are the sum total of our decisions. And there's absolutely no judgment in this. We are where we are.
yeah.
I liked that. And that actually stopped me, and it jumped out at me. So I grabbed my highlighter and highlighted it. We are the result of virtually every decision we have ever made. Now, I bet some people, if they hear that, of course, to me it makes common sense. But some people be like, "Oh, you're talking all this woo-woo stuff," and I've had people mention that to me when I've mentioned NLP or other techniques and stuff that I've been learning about. How is it that you explain that to someone? All our lives, we are a product of every decision that we've ever made, good or bad.
Yeah.
And that's having to take a hard look at yourself when you
Yeah.
admit that. How do you find, do you have clients that have difficulty with that, having to look themselves in the mirror and tell themselves, wow, I am a result of every single decision I've ever made?
Yes, some people, because quite a lot of clients have something called, some people have secondary gain. And before I start working with someone, I kind of work that out. And there's no judgment in that either. It's that actually someone's become so disempowered and is actually, they're embracing being inverted. I don't like the word either, victim, but the world does to them rather than they act in the world. It's that everything happens to them, and they're not in control. And so effectively it's about understanding whether they actually want to take control, or whether they're getting something out of doing a problem. They get something out of it, as opposed to that's more than the pain that the problem causes them. So there's a whole process of having to explain that.
I find I find it fascinating. And when you sit there, when I sat there and thought to myself, I am the product of every decision I've ever made. Sometimes that's a hard pill to swallow.
It is.
And
It's
and sometimes it probably is easier to, like you say, putting it in quotes, play the victim card, oh, well, this person did that and that happened to me and this happened. And I don't believe that I've ever been one that was a woe is me person.
hmm.
Um, and I don't think I've ever asked, well, why is this happening to me? Because why not? Life happens. Why
Yes.
wouldn't certain things happen to me? It's all in how I choose to handle it.
Yeah.
And I've learned that more and more as I've aged, I guess. I mean, when I was younger, I don't know of anybody that would ever have looked at themselves quite that closely. you know, to look at themselves quite that closely.
We don't, and I think if we taught NLP in schools, we taught it to children, then we'd have a different world, because they would understand how we don't get it. We don't get an instruction manual for how our mind works. And things happen, life happens. And, you know, some people have extremely horrible experiences in their lives.
Yes.
And so, you know, patterns get created. And when we're children, patterns get created unconsciously up to the age of 7. Everything is unconscious. So the limiting beliefs that we take on, they go in unconsciously. And by the age of 35, you know, it's kind of said that we're just a set of patterns, we're a set of habits, we run behaviors continuously. And unless we stop and think about it, because our unconscious mind, our mind wants to run like that because it wants to take shortcuts. It's devised like that because of all the information. We couldn't cope in the world if we stopped and thought about every single thing that we did,
Right.
and how we operated. So that's why we're learning how the mind works and learning how we can to become more conscious. And I kind of call it super consciousness, is when you can you bring the unconscious mind and the conscious mind together, and then that's what, you know, that's what you end up with more awareness. Sorry, I've just realized my battery is gone.
Well, and looking at the end of your article, there's a sentence, another one that stood out to me that I highlighted on my end. It says, one last thing. It's how you ended your article. One last thing. If you tend to play yourself down, switch it and really play yourself up for once. I love that sentence because too often we look at ourselves as not worthy enough, not smart enough, not pretty enough, not strong enough. And how do you work with your clients that may have some of those self-doubt beliefs ingrained in their brains from whatever age they sunk in there?
Well, in terms of those limiting beliefs, when I first start working with my client, is I take a really good detailed personal history. So that's the only time we might look at the past. And I really listen to the language they use. And quite often that's when the limiting beliefs come out and the negative emotions. And there is a process that I use called timeline therapy, creating your future, which is the goal setting part. But it's a process of active imagination, which is actually about removing those limiting beliefs and re-resourcing. So the process in itself is conscious, unconscious, to get, and it's a detached process, and it is a process of active imagination. So basically, this might get a bit, people think it's a bit woo-woo, but seriously, it's kind of linked into quantum physics. The mirror image reverse of something. So if you have a limiting belief, it's the mirror image reverse of that. So identifying all the resources that you have, how you could have possibly seen it in a different way. So you're not going back to a specific time. We want to go before the first event of that limiting belief, which you're not going to remember. But by doing that, that's the place where nothing happened. So it's the place where you could create anything. And so you're flipping, essentially, the limiting. You've decided beforehand what the empowering belief is going to be. So the client decides every word. But you also decide the resources that are going to enable you to have that powerful, empowering belief. And basically through the processes, you go through a process of practice, imaginative practice in your mind, by reframing all of those events with the resources that you now have and with that empowering belief. And it's just a process that people go through inside their mind, however they do it, to start to rewire that limiting belief with the empowering one and with all the resources. Now, people this process is used with people who have PTSD as well and who have phobias. So people kind of go, oh, can't do that. You know, it has to take a long time. But that again is a belief that things have to take a long time. As soon as you change how a neural pathway, as soon as you start to weaken one neural pathway and build a new one, what you're doing is you're literally changing the architecture of your brain. So again, going back to the children's stuff, when we do children's development, talking about children developing, is you get something when you wire a neural network, you create a myelin sheathing around it. So you're literally creating a pathway in your mind. So you can do that by going through a practicing process to start to get people to understand this in their unconscious mind, not just their conscious mind. Because we can go around, affirmations, and I do encourage people to affirmate. I prefer kind of what I call, what Tony Robbins calls incantations, where you embody it, and you're standing up and you're using your breath, and you're using your voice, and you're embodying your affirmation. But the affirmations have to be created by the client, has to be personal, has to be their words. And then obviously they have to practice and start doing the work and keep focused on what they want as opposed to what they don't want. So that's just, it combines. And that's how I get clients to learn to reframe everything as well. When they start to go into the negative thinking, is thinking, okay, how can I look at this? What is a more useful way to look at this? What benefit, if I say, oh, I can't do something, it's like, what benefit will me doing that have for somebody else? How can it, and so they're detaching essentially from that. They're looking and they're looking from the third person. What benefit will it have for another, or a second person, for another person have? And again, it's just taking different perspectives, and I will do it in a different way with different clients. And if something doesn't work, I try something else.
Well, it sounds a lot like law of attraction.
It is law of attraction. That's the thing. It's so funny as people are very, and I've noticed people are very into law of attraction, and I never really used the term, but NLP is purely, it really is, it's law of attraction. Is you focus, it's about always focusing on what you want. But what we do is we engage the unconscious mind, same with law of attraction, proper law of attraction. You engage the unconscious mind because that is the one that will get the goal for you. You activate the reticular activating system. So that is what it's going to start seeing those things that you want as opposed to all the things that you don't want. And I mean, I don't know if you hear around you is that when you ask somebody what they want, that very often they'll tell you everything that they don't want. And and with my clients, they get stumped because they're so used to saying what they don't want, and you really drilling down and saying, what do you want? And they have to sit there and really, really think. And that in itself can be a really powerful step.
Yeah.
Because they'll go away and they'll go to sleep and their unconscious mind will start working. I had a new client the other day, and she said, oh, like I said, go sleep. Your mind will be working. And she messaged me the next day and she said, oh God, I woke up with a headache. And I've had a headache quite a lot today, which is unusual for her. And I said, yeah, your mind has started working. You've given it permission to actually start doing the stuff that you've been repressing all of this time, however many years. And now you let the cat out of the bag. And it's all going to be so yeah, it's incredible.
Well, and it was funny, last night I was on Netflix flicking through and The Secret came up. Have you watched that?
No, I haven't. I haven't watched. I've read a few books. I've in the past I've read a few books, so no, I haven't read it specifically. My preference is a little bit more sciencey. I'm liking like people like Bruce Lipton, Dr. Joe Dispenza. That's more
this was a lot of philosophers were on there. Then it was literally just, and I never ever watched TV, but I was crocheting and had something on in the background, and I went, oh, it's called The Secret. What's that about? I'd heard people talking about it in the book, and this was actually the people, like interviews with these people. I found it very interesting. It's nothing that I've really jumped into, or some folks seem to it seems like a bandwagon everybody's jumping on. But I wanted to I started paying a little more attention to it. But some of the points that you brought up today, very similar to how they were describing the law of attraction, and how you said everybody's so easy and so quick to say what they don't want. And that's such a natural reaction, even for myself. They actually brought that up in this program last night, and saying, take a pen and paper and write down what it is you want. Don't write what you don't want or why you probably won't get it. You want it, write it down, and just reframe your words. But it's more than just reframing your words. You've got to reframe your brain, just as you were explaining, um, in order to be able to think that way regularly. And that is a tough exercise. I did it for maybe about 5 minutes, just for the heck of it. And I'm going, oh my goodness, this is much harder than I thought it would be. So I can understand why you said your client ended up with a headache the one day, because I think that, yeah, once you open up those doors and things start coming out, it's like, like a waterfall. You
Well, that's kind of when I'm framing the whole process of timeline therapy, and I talk to people about their unconscious mind and how it works. And it's being the seat of all memory. Every single memory is there somewhere, but we repress memories, and we every time we have a memory, it's kind of like we're synthesizing it a bit more. So we're reducing the detail in it effectively. So that memory actually isn't what happened. So therefore, if we want a memory, we take all the emotion off the negative memories, and we can remember it in a different way. And that's incredibly, that releases a huge amount of energy as well for people, because we're taking energy, carrying that knapsack of negative emotions and limiting beliefs. And sometimes when you do the process and you see the person the next time and they're wearing bright colors and they're color in their face, and literally there is a physical response, the mind body connection. So,
Yeah.
and I also think is that, there are a lot of different processes that people use, and, we all do similar things. It's the practitioner and the client, and it's the thing that works for that client, really. Because
Sure.
I don't think anyone is better than any other.
Right.
They're just different. They're just framed in different ways. So,
I find it all fascinating, that, and I'm just kind of, puttering around with it, reading bits here and there, because I've talked to a lot of people, and that people like you that help clients, or people that are the clients, and saying, they're singing the praises of how it's helped them. And that's just got my mind thinking, I want to look into this. I'm one of those people that likes to learn anyway. So if something interests me, and I've enjoyed delving into it. I might not understand a lot of it, but I enjoy delving into it. So I appreciate, I mean, obviously you're a wealth of knowledge, and I appreciate you sharing your time today and providing this to so many that are going to be listening to this, and they can reach out to you to learn more. So
yeah.
where can they find you so they can reach out to you?
I can contact me through my website on www.abovebeyondcoaching.co.uk, or connect with me on LinkedIn or Facebook.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thanks so much for being with me today. And I'm going to share a little bit here about MO2VATE Magazine, which is what we're here for today. Fenella provided her wonderful article for the magazine of the 4th issue. MO2VATE Magazine is the small business Bible. MO2VATE Magazine, it is the micro and small business owners' go-to business Bible. Written by small business owners for small business owners who want to lead in their respective industries. So visit motivatemag.com to learn more and subscribe. Fenella, thanks again so much for being with us today. Wealth of knowledge, wealth of knowledge. I am going to probably hop right off this interview and go grab my little NLP for Dummies and dig in there again today and read some more. So thank you so much for getting my brain sparked into wanting to learn even more about it. And thank you for your time.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, Kim. It's been lovely to chat with you.
Thanks. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
I don't know if it's still going. It's still going.